And coming down the stairs to the basement, it's our new friend, Alan Corey. I wish it's funny because I've known of you forever. It's about time I finally got to know you, Alan.
Thanks for inviting me to the basement. It was getting awkward upstairs with your mother. I just, my 10th cup of coffee. I'm like, am I ever going to get that invite?
And by the way, if there's a guy that needs the 10th cup of coffee, I will say definitively, it's not you.
That's probably true. That's probably true. I've got enough energy already.
Well, let's dive in, my friend, because you start off your new book by saying, don't dream about being rich, get rich dreaming. And I like that as a beginning, but I'm really wondering what's in your head when you say that phrase?
It's basically having your money work for you while you're sleeping and dreaming, right? I've found a way through real estate to make that happen. We're basically a business that doesn't require my day-to-day, hour-to-hour attention. Maybe 2 hours out of the month, I have to deal with something, but most of that time I'm sleeping during that month, but I still end up making income and cash flow and getting paid while I'm in my pajamas, which is a pretty good gig.
That is a good gig. I'm not wearing pants right now. So, hey,
there you go. Well, you got good gig.
Ellen's like, I'm sitting across from you and that's creepy, but whatever. But you had that job, right? At one point you had that 9-to-5 job and it wasn't working for you.
It was. I did tech support for about 10 years and I could never control my income in that job. Like it required other people approving bonuses and giving me raises. And honestly, if I worked so hard, there was definitely no guarantee that I would get a raise even, right? The business could still be sold or collapse or whatnot. And so I had to go out and decided I was going to take my income and my outcome into control for myself. And that was going out investing in real estate.
Do you come from a family of investors, from people that work for themselves, or was this new?
No, both my parents are public school teachers and think I'm the craziest person in the world. Yeah.
Which, by the way,
this was all self-taught.
I'm going to skip ahead because I was going to ask you this later. You also make a point of saying some of these big things that we're going to talk about today, about dreaming and about building a real estate empire. You shouldn't tell your family and friends about this. Why is that?
Well, because they don't understand it and they're going to bring you down. They're going to tell you all the horror stories and just freak you out. And it's not as scary because most landlords, they become landlords out of inheritance. That's your typical mom and pop landlord. So something was thrown at them while they're grieving and they have no interest in real estate. And then they're the ones who talk about how terrible it is, how they're getting calls at 3:00 in the morning for a toilet and the tenant doesn't pay. And basically they're unprepared to be landlords. If that is your story, and that's most people's story, if you're not in the real estate world or if you've not read a book about real estate or listened to a podcast about real estate or whatever it is, it's not like that at all if you go prepared. Just like if you wouldn't go camping in the wilderness unprepared, but if your parents died and someone threw you in the woods, you'd complain a lot about camping.
And complaining is the least of your worries too, right?
Right, exactly.
You might starve while you're bitching the whole way.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's not well-meaning, right? I think I just want to parse this for our listeners. People can give you well-meaning advice. I mean, they want what's best for you, but they just don't know.
Right. People are familiar with the buckets and the crab syndrome, where you put all 10 crabs in a bucket and they can actually get out, but someone always pulls the one down, like they climb on top of each other and keep each other from growing and escaping or whatever freedom that they want. I believe it is well-meaning. I always like to get my advice from people who have done it. So if you're getting your advice from people who have never done it, that's one thing. Or if you're getting advice from someone who's inherited a property, that's one thing. But also, I think bad stories make you a better real estate investor because you learn from experience. 3 times I've applied for graduate school because I'm like, I want to learn about real estate. And I do all the applications and the interviews and I get in and then I get hit with this tuition bill. It's like, oh, by the way, for 2 years, it's going to be $100,000. And I'm like, well, I'd rather spend $100,000 failing on buying a real estate property that I have no means doing because I'm going to learn way more doing that than I will in a classroom. And all 3 times I spent that $100,000, I've doubled that money. So I'm like, well, I'm glad I work in experience rather than sort of the school book education where a lot of people just get frozen on and they first timer freeze. They read all about it and they still can't make that move. But for me, I'd rather make that move and lose my money and call it tuition.
I want to talk about your experience. By the way, you wrote a book. Your first book was $1 Million by 30. But for people who didn't read that, let's talk about your path. Tell me about when you first decided, Alan, that you wanted, I guess we'll put air quotes around the word more. When did you want more?
Yeah, I moved to New York at the age of 21, right after college. I just was surrounded by wealth. I never had money. I didn't come from a family with money. I came from a family of penny pitchers. I was just like, how are people so wealthy here? Like you just see the fancy cars. Like I could barely afford a slice of pizza. And so I devoured every single book I could on personal finance and wealth creation and real estate investing and stocks and mutual funds. And I was like, what's going to work for me? And it just made sense that I connected quickly with real estate because I've lived in a house. I know what a house looks like. Okay, I can do this. But for stocks, I just felt like I wasn't in control. I couldn't go walk into a boardroom and say, hey, CEO, raise your prices and fire that guy. But I can do that when I own a property, right? I control everything. So I wanted to be in control. I just felt like just at my day job, I wasn't in control. And so I was like, I'm never going to get wealthy unless I can control my own destiny and my own finances. And so I figured out, well, this is my income. If I could just buy one property a year for 5 years, that was my goal, I could replace my entire income. All I needed was $100, $200 in cash flow each month. And if I did that for 5 years in a row, I felt like I could leave my day job and be financially free.
Did that math end up working out? Can you really do it with 5 houses? Because you say in your book that you were drunk on boxed wine when you did that.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Yes, it can. The way I look at it, and what's different, and your audience might be familiar with the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence and Retire Early. That whole philosophy is saving, 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 and then you retire once you have like $1 million in your bank account. And that turns so many people off because it's like, wait a minute, I got to be a millionaire first? Yeah, of course. I can retire once I'm a millionaire. And I have to live on a budget once I become a millionaire. So you are a millionaire, but you can't live like a millionaire. And that's a hard thing to pitch. But real estate, you don't have to become a millionaire before you can retire. And what I did is I just took every bill in my life. So let's start with $150 internet bill. I know I will never escape this $150 internet bill unless I want to go to the library and read stupid forwards from my aunt every time I check my email. But so $150, the FIRE principle is save 25 times that annual expense. So that is $45,000 a year. So if you save $45,000 a year and you withdraw 4% of that every single year, you'll have your $150 internet bill paid every month. Real estate says, well, that's crazy. Why don't you take $20,000? That's half, $22,500. Let's call it that. You take half of that amount, you can go buy a house for $100,000. That's a 20% down payment, $2,500 for closing costs. And that's going to cash flow you $150 a month. That $150 pays for my internet bill. I didn't have to become a millionaire. I didn't have to save $45,000. I only had to save half that amount. That's the beauty of house fire. I burned every bill with house fire. So I just went through every bill in my life, found a rental property to cover that bill. And once you do about 5 of those, that's going to cover your utility bills and your transportation bills, a portion of your food bill. You're going to be pretty set. You're going to be financially free in 5 homes. You don't have to be a real estate mogul. You might become one. And so that warning to everyone, you might become ridiculously rich. But I fell in love with it. And I was like, oh, I'll just keep doing this every year. And now I'm buying 5 a month instead of 1 a year.
I wanted to ask you that next. How many houses do you own now, or how many different doors do you own now?
It's over 200 doors. I've got over 50 single family homes and a couple apartment complexes personally. And then I've got more with that I've partnered with others.
I'm assuming now that you say 5 a month versus 1 per year, that 1 per year ended up being easier than you thought it was.
Yeah. And people are like, well, how do you have the time for that? Yeah. So that's always the number one question. Every house I buy, I budget in a property manager. So about 10% of the property income goes to a property manager. They don't get paid unless the house has a tenant in it. And so they're incentivized to have it filled. And also they get 10% of the rent. So they're incentivized to get it as rent it as high as possible. So if the house doesn't make sense for me financially with a property manager, then I don't buy it. But if it does have a property manager, then it's really no effort. All I have to do is answer usually one email a month from the property manager. Hey, do you approve this hot water replacement? Yes or no? All I get is yes or no questions. It takes none of my time. So it's really hands off and very, very passive, just like investing in a mutual fund.
Do you have to rehab the house when you first buy it?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. You don't have to. This plan can work rehabbing, and the plan can also work not rehabbing. So it's really, I say there's a million ways to make $1 million in real estate. You can buy the houses at foreclosure. You can buy the houses on the FML, in the MLS market. You can buy the houses from your neighbor or from another investor. Like you can buy townhomes. You can buy apartments. You can buy mobile home parks. Just find a niche and become the expert in that small niche, whatever interests you, and run with it. What I've learned is once you have a reputation for a certain product type, whether that's the condo, the apartment, brownstone, then everyone else comes to you and says, hey, I know you invest in X. I've got 3 of those. You want to buy them? And so then I'm like, oh, I already know this product. I'm an expert in this product, so I'll buy those 3. And then those people say, hey, if you're selling this, go talk to Alan. And so just find one niche and the deals start coming to you.
My son has 4 houses. He's been doing it for about 2.5 years. And he's already getting incoming calls in from the area where he's in Detroit real estate. And he knows this street's good, that street's bad. Right. And you're right. Pick a niche and kind of dive there. I absolutely love that. By the way, I don't think you really were drunk off box wine. I think that was a joke.
I said it was bourbon. It was actually bourbon, but
a little more upscale.
Made for a funnier joke.
There were several times when I found myself laughing out loud during your book while I'm writing and taking notes. But let's go through that about being more upscale, because you did talk about fire and coming up with your fire number. You mentioned that briefly earlier, but I want to dive into this a little. I'm not that worried about for today for coming up with the fire number, and for people that get our guide. I will give you links to figure that out. Obviously, you can buy Alan's book and he will walk through how to get the fire number. But I think we have to do this just a little bit, Alan, because there's 2 other questions that I have that kind of spring from this question. So for people, just to take it to 101, what is this idea of coming up with your fire number?
So this is the number where you can be financially independent mathematically. You take your annual expenses, multiply it by 25. And if you have that in some sort of savings, typically mutual funds, IRAs, stocks, some holdings that you can withdraw 4% of that will cover your annual expenses for the rest of your life. And that's accounting for all the dips and valleys of investing. That's with timing with the worst stock market crash possible. But if you've saved 25% of your annual expenses, or 25 times your annual expenses, you can be financially independent.
And this is also a reason why you like real estate, because even if the stock market goes down or the value of the house goes down, that income stream is really what you're worried about, that you're living on, that keeps you independent.
Right. So most people are worried that the value of the home will go down, but real estate investors don't worry about that. Your lease has a 12-month lag. So on any sort of market, if there's any correction in rental, it's a year behind. And a lot of times the real estate is bounced back by then. But also, just because a property, let's say a house dropped in value from $200,000 to $150,000, that doesn't mean the rent drops from $2,000 to $1,500. The rent is usually pretty stable. If anything, if there's a real estate market crash, people lose their jobs, people lose their homes, and it creates more of a renter market. And it's actually makes it better to have the rentals in the situation in a down economy.
So to dive into this fire number, engineers, Alan, are going to wonder, 25, like you say, multiply that number by 25. Why the hell do we multiply by 25? Do you know?
I honestly, I don't know. This is the Trinity study, was the Bible of the fire movement, where everyone says this is what the mathematician came up with. And the 4% was a very conservative withdrawal rate. I think he's now revised it and said, well, you could probably get by with 5 and 5.5%.
Yeah.
But 4% is very, very conservative and a way to do it. Yeah.
And then the 2 things I had, because like I said, I'm not that worried about focusing too much on the number. And we will have resources for people, as I mentioned, for people that really want to dig into that. But there's two pieces of this that I do want to dig into. Number one, you say there's obviously some pretty big repercussions. One is if you lower your expenses, that makes that number easier. It makes everything easier. So one trick you can do is spend less money.
You can, but to me, that means you are downgrading your lifestyle, right? You can sell your car and ride your bike. And depending on what city you're in, that's an upgrade. But most people, that's a downgrade to your lifestyle. But hey, you saved a car payment or you saved money on gas and you're closer to your fire number. The beauty of house fire says, well, you don't have to lower your expenses because the more houses that you own, typically the real estate appreciation is 3% a year after accounting for inflation. It's about 1.5%. So you're actually making more money each month and your mortgages get paid off. Your rental, what you charge in rent typically goes up just through inflation. So the longer you are house firing, you're actually living larger and larger in retirement.
You go through different levels of fire, but there's some big ass fire term that you use.
Hellfire.
Hellfire.
My goal is hellfire. Yes. If hellfire stands for having every luxury in life and financial independence and retire early. And that is having $500,000 budget every year. That's your annual expenses, $500,000. And if you do house fire, you start on it and you just buy one house a year, you'll be reaching hellfire and earlier than you would expect. And those are ridiculous numbers. That wasn't my goal when I started. It was just to leave my day job. And now it's like, oh, wow, this is easy. It just sort of feeds upon itself at this point.
I feel like when it comes to buying houses, a lot of people say, hey, I want to get into real estate and I want to buy one. It sounds if we're taking one house and we're putting one bill, like you mentioned, your internet bill with it, but this isn't about buying one house, Alan. This is about buying several houses.
So the most conservative way to invest in real estate is to buy a property in all cash or buy a rental property and do all you can to get rid of that mortgage, make extra payments. This is the fallacy that every real estate investor who's beginning and new wants to do. Let's say you have a $100,000 house and you paid off in all cash. And so you spent $100,000 buying this house in cash. And, well, it burns to the ground. Congratulations, you lost $100,000. What I would say is it would have been less risky to take that $100,000, chop it up into $20,000 increments, and go buy 5 homes. And if you burn one to the ground, wow, you only lost $20,000. But not only that, because you have a mortgage company is going to make you have home insurance and they will rebuild the home for you. So it's actually less risky. And so in that way, you have your money spread out. Just like buying one stock, you wouldn't put $100,000 in one stock if that's all the money you would have. You would buy a mutual fund or buy 5 stocks or whatever. You want diversity. And I say every property comes with a lottery ticket. And what I mean by that is appreciation. If you buy 5 homes, one of those homes in that school district, there's a new charter school that's wonderful, or a new park comes in, or a new subway stop, or wherever it is that you have no control of. This is called passive appreciation. If you can spread out those imaginary lottery tickets across 5 instead of 1, you're going to do all right, because then that one property now turns into a $200,000 property overnight and you did nothing. But if you have all your eggs in one basket, you're not spreading out your risk and you're not getting all those imaginary lottery tickets.
And with your strategy, you don't need the lottery ticket at all. I mean, because you're going for cash flow, not for that lottery ticket. That's just bonus appreciation to get you to your hellfire quicker.
That's just the gravy on the biscuit. You should never buy a property based on that imaginary ticket payout, but it's just a bonus.
But this also makes me think that this is more about if the magic is to have many different lottery tickets, to have diversification, really, this is about systems. Like I think of, I've got a friend that owns a burger shop in town, and he made one burger shop, not because that was going to make him a lot of money. He knew it wouldn't. But he knew that he needed a prototype so he could do 5 of these, right? Because he knew that if he did 5 of the burger shops, it was going to be better. I feel like that's the same thing here, right? It's about building a system around real estate so that you can continually improve, develop your team, and get this ball rolling.
Yeah, you only really need one superstar team member. So if you have a superstar real estate agent or a superstar property manager or a superstar lender, they surround themselves with other superstars and you just piggyback off their system. Okay. So what you should do is, hey, I want to invest in this town. Let me call the best top realtor in that town, because that top realtor is going to know all the property managers, all the lenders, the contractors, everything you need, right? The superstars just seem to hang out with each other. They know that they got their back and they're going to do a good job. So plug in, just find one superstar in your town or the town you want to invest in and piggyback off that network, and they're happy to help you.
I'm going to ask just a couple questions here about the real estate market because you're in it every day. We see some of these incredible prices right now, Alan. You're seeing them all over the place. And some of the bidding, people are doing 20% above asking price, or people are bidding, creating these crazy conditions like, I'll waive the inspection, which I think is nuts. Are you finding it harder to compete in real estate with these conditions?
Well, a lot of the headlines you see are for primary residence buying and not real estate investing. So a lot of those big stories are people willing to pay extra because they want that commute to work, or they'll pay extra because they want that school district, or they want to be close to family. That's not how a real estate investor would evaluate a property. The real estate investor is, hey, I don't care if the home's sexy. Is it sexy on a spreadsheet? So you don't see that crazy fervor as much in real estate investing properties, the duplexes, the triplexes, the quadruplexes, because all it comes down to are the numbers. What does it rent for, or what can I get those rents to? And then what is my mortgage payment? And pretty much all the investors run their numbers very similarly. So there's a ceiling on real estate investing. You don't really get these 100,000 over asking, because then it's like, wait a minute, I bought this property and now it's losing money. So it's a different way to evaluate properties, and it's disassociated with buying a property to live in, which is a life, not an investment decision.
And then your method, I mean, I get why you would go with buy and hold real estate, because you're trying to create this income stream that you can live off of, right? And it becomes easier all the time. Frankly, I would think that if you get long-term renters in there, even if you have a property manager who deals with the in and out, like that's even more gravy. But why not flip real estate? Why hold instead of flip?
I support that too. Flipping real estate is windfall payments. So you're putting a lot of outgoing money. You're buying a property, a lot of outgo for renovations and contractors, and then at the end, you sell it and you get a windfall. I've done that. I do that. I encourage others to do this. The worries that you need to be aware of is you pay way more taxes this way, because it's all short-term capital gains taxes. You don't get the tax breaks like a 1031. And also, if you're trying to do this while you have your day job, you're going up against people who do this as their full-time job. So a lot of times you're at a disadvantage going in. If you don't already have your teams, you don't have the construction crew, the architects, whatever you need up front, it's going to be difficult. So maybe your first 2 or 3 flips are going to lose money or break even until you do get those systems in place. So it's not a weekend warrior thing like HGTV teaches a lot of people. People do this as their full-time job, and that's who you're up against. And they're the ones who are going to get the deals faster. They can pay in all cash. They can move quick. They can get it back on the market in 3 months. And that's difficult to do if you're working 40 hours a week.
Yeah, I felt that too, that really you need flipping to be your full-time job if you're going to go about it that way. It just seems, I don't know if harder is the right word, but
a great way to do it if this is interest of yours and it's not your full-time job is to do a live and flip. And so the con, obviously you're working in a renovation and living in a renovation, but if you can find a property where you update the kitchen for a month and you eat out that month, and then you live upstairs while you do the downstairs bedroom and flip-flop, that's the way you can make great wealth, because you're buying a primary residence loan, which you can get for 0% down, 3% down, 5% down, and then you're not on a tight schedule. You can work at your own pace. And then when you sell that property, as long as you've lived in it for 2 years, it's completely tax-free for the first $250,000 profit if you're single, or $500,000 profit if you're married. So if you made $250,000 or $500,000 over those first 2 years, then you should just do this every single 2 years. You know what you're doing.
I have friends, they have 2 kids. So it's a family of 4, Alan, doing this here in town. And they've done 3 during the time that I've known them. He's just interested in construction, loves doing a lot of the work himself. The demo stuff is easy, but even some of the construction stuff himself, he'll do the more difficult stuff, the electrical, the crazy stuff. He'll hire in people that know more than him. But for him, it's just a weekend thing. And his wife, Stephanie, is fantastic at decorating. and at landscaping. So for 2 years, and they've done this 3 times, and for them, it's this great side income, right? It's not what you're talking about of building fire. It's just building extra money. And in that way, it's building
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're renovating their primary residence, so they're adding value to it. The hardest part about that model is finding a spouse that supports this of moving every 2 years.
That's right. Yeah. They are clearly married to the right person, both of them. Like they have. I don't think Cheryl and I could do that crap. There's no way could do that.
I've tried to convince my wife to move every 2 years, and we move about every 7 years, so it takes me 7 years of breaking down. Like, hey, let's go buy this other property. So yeah.
He's got this long-term game plan going.
Yeah.
That's good. My last question is the opposite side of what we talked about. We've talked about all these things that people worry about, Alan, but they shouldn't. And you focus a lot on that in the book. But what are some things that people don't worry about, but they really should? What's the converse of this discussion?
I mean, I think people I struggle to answer this because I don't see the worry in anything. I mean, I don't. I think people worry about, hey, is this a house I want to live in? And so they buy into a house and then they fix it up and they're like, I want granite countertops. And I want this to be pretty. When I tell my friends, hey, I own a rental house, here's the address, go drive by it. I want it to be the showpiece with a manicured lawn. And that is not a worry you should have. It should be the opposite of that. Like hey, what is the rent going to support? Like if you add $5,000 granite countertops, are you going to be able to raise the rent $50 a month? No, then don't do it. Your tenant's not upset. Most tenants don't know the difference between granite countertops or Formica or whatever it is because they've never experienced it. All they care about is I need a house that's close to my work, right? And I'll stay there forever, provide me a safe place. And people try to worry for their tenants. And you'll know if you need to change something if you put it on the market and you don't get any applications in the first 2 weeks. Then maybe you got to change the price or you got to change something in the house. But I don't know if I exactly answered your question, but I don't have any worries about real estate because I love it and I know every ins and outs. And if you surround yourself with that good team, like I said, they're going to be doing all the worrying and suss everything out for you.
I think you definitely clearly answered it because here's what I heard that people don't worry about enough. People don't worry enough about doing the math up front to make sure that this is actually going to achieve your goal. And you also don't worry enough about treating it like a business. Because if you're treating it like your own home, you're not treating it enough like a business. And people need to worry more about that. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And everyone's like, what is this math? What's the math? What's the math? And it's so simple. Like I'm a dumb idiot and I'm successful in the real estate world. So this is really easy math. You don't have to have an engineering degree, but all it is what is my mortgage payment? What are my property taxes, which usually are included in your mortgage payment? What is my, home insurance, which also can be included in your mortgage payment if you escrow everything. And then I typically do 10% of the rental income, just take it off the top for vacancies or repairs. You can do that again for repairs, 10% for repairs, 10% for vacancy. Those are very, very conservative numbers. You just take all that, put it in a spreadsheet, and then figure out what you can rent it for or what it's already rented for. And that delta, that's how you go kill some bills with. It's going to be $100. It's going to be $300. It's going to be $400. And the way I look at it, everyone gets analysis paralysis. But if you take that one bill that you hate in your life and just go buy a property that covers that bill, that's the decision. That's all the decision. Sure, you can look for 2 years and maybe find a property that makes $160 a month instead of $150 a month. But then you just spent 2 years wasting your time when you could have been killing those bills or burning up those bills with house fire.
Boy, that sounds like very intelligent math to me. And it's funny how people hear the word math and they think, it's got to be tough. Math actually can be pretty damn fun. The book is House Fire. And I want to go to the back of the book. Well, first of all, there's a lot of people already. The book just came out and there's a lot of people already that are getting some huge benefits from it. It's rated 4.9 out of 5 on Amazon. I noticed today when I was getting ready for it. So ain't too shabby there, Mr. Corey, with the reviews. Reviews are looking good. But on the back, you've got a couple people that talk about your book on the back cover. Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. Do you know Barbara personally?
Well, I taught her everything she knows.
So I shouldn't have laughed. Why did I laugh? I need to play that straight for you.
No, so I flipped a building. It was an apartment building in Brooklyn, New York, and this was my third property I ever bought. A storefront on the ground floor with 2 apartments up top. 25-year-old kid with no money, but I found the deal. I found the partners. I found the contractor. I was just the glue that kept it all together. And she bought it herself once it was fully renovated, sold the first $1 million property in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And at that point, I was like, wait a minute. Am I making a mistake selling to Barbara Corcoran, who knows everything from Shark Tank? And you know, she owns Corcoran at the time, or Corcoran Brokerage. Or am I doing something right? You know, like should I take this as a confidence thing, or am I making a mistake because Barbara's buying my property? So anyway, she bought my property, and then we've just sort of been in touch, you know, here and there ever since. So she's wonderful and great, and a mentor. You know, I read all of her books, and
that is fantastic. That's a cool story too. I didn't know any of that. And then second, from, of course, a guy who's been on this show a bajillion times, I feel like, Brandon Turner. And I know you're friends with Brandon, Josh, and David and the team over there at Bigger Pockets as well.
Yeah. So Brandon interviewed me before he worked at Bigger Pockets for my first book, $1 Million by 30, when he had a website called Real Estate in his 20s, and Real Estate in Your 20s. And so I also say I taught Brandon Turner everything he knows as well.
Nice job. You are a ninja with that, dude. That is so awesome. Well, Alan, and the book is available where? Book's available everywhere?
It's available everywhere, but Amazon's obviously the easiest for most people.
Yeah, awesome. Alan Corey, thanks a ton for talking House Fire with us. I'm so inspired, and I hope you inspired a lot of our audience. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, Joe. Does this mean I have to go hang out with your mom again?
I'll go up there with us because I think there's brownies, so we got to go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Perfect.